Visit Sailrite.com for your project supplies, tools, and instructions. In this video, we're going to show you how to reupholster a backrest bolster cushion. We'll be using Outdura, a 100% solution dyed acrylic that's great for indoor and outdoor uses.
These are the old bolster backrest cushions for our salon, and they really do look great the way that they are designed like this. And making this is not that difficult. These are actually attached via hook and loop on the back side and a few snaps at a few locations. So this is one continuous piece. Let's first concentrate on the back panel and open up the foam to see if it's in good shape.
In this first chapter, we'll be examining the old foam.
So we're going to open up the zipper on the back plate and inspect the foam. Usually a backrest is not subjected to much pressure, so the foam doesn't usually get compressed a lot and then eventually bottom out. And as you can see, this foam is actually in great shape, and they have a little bit of batting on the front of it. We're going to reuse this foam, and usually for a backrest like this, if you have old ones, you can reuse the foam. So we'll be taking that out.
Next up, measuring and cutting the bottom plate.
We're going to measure the back plate. Here's my tape measure. From seam to seam, with it splayed out as much as we possibly can. So if I hold here and I measure there, it would be 13 inches. And then we need to add 1 inch for a half-inch seam allowance here and here. We also want to measure from end to end, and I've already done that. So we're basically going to cut a bottom plate that's exactly that measurement, adding the half-inch seam allowance on all sides. We're making it the exact same size as the old one because the foam hasn't compressed much. So we're not reducing it so it shrinks up the foam by any means whatsoever. We're going to duplicate exactly what was made. When we measured all the way from the other side to this seam here, we had 137.5. We had a half inch and another half inch for seam allowance. That would be 138.5, and then 13 plus a half inch equals 14 for the height. Now here, this is the only edge that has a contoured shape, and I will worry about that later. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a plate that's bigger than this by several inches, just in case it shrinks up when I sew the zipper. So I'm going to cut my plate to, let's say 143 or 145, just so I have extra. So for the back plate, we're going to use Eversoft vinyl. This is an indoor-outdoor vinyl. This is a smooth-looking vinyl. Now I know for the back plate, who cares really, but this will make it easy for us to just slit the zippers, and it's great vinyl for that. It's also great for seating applications, so don't just think of it as a back plate fabric. So I'm just going to measure at 14 inches because that is the height. And 145 I think is what I was going to do for the length, and we'll strike it with a scriball pencil, strike lines on this, and then cut it out with scissors. Now the reason I don't have to worry about the zippers is just because we're slitting the zippers. I don't have to add any excess for zippers for this, which is kind of nice. Now we just move it down the table and continue measuring. We used one continuous piece of vinyl. You could actually use a less amount of vinyl and actually just put a seam in it, so you could put them facing each other, so a half inch from the edge, and then use multiple pieces for the back plate. But hey, we sell fabric, so we made it one continuous length.
Coming up, we'll be sewing the zipper to the bottom plate.
Next, we're going to determine the placement for the two zippers, and we're just going to use our old piece as an example for this. So consider that our half-inch seam allowance, and that puts the zipper at pretty much 4 inches. Doesn't have to be exact. Just make sure this one's the same. You'll see this one's way off. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to just put the zippers at 4 inches here, from 4 inches here, and the center seam, which makes the bolster, is at 6.5. Now regarding the loop here, this is a 2-inch loop. It is about, what is it, 3/8? No, that's not 3/8, is that 3/4? Yeah. It's about 3/4 from the edge, so we're going to sew that on at 3/4 inches from the edge, considering our seam allowance. So there we go. So remember, we're going to put the zipper at 4 inches here, but I want to strike a line that is going to basically be either the top or the bottom. So here's where I'll strike my line all the way across, and we'll do it 4 inches from here, and we'll strike a line. We'll put the zipper in the center of that, and I'll strike my line here for that. So if you have something that's smaller like this, I usually just wet the end of my scribe ball and I do this. That way I can easily measure all the way down at each one of those locations, and then that makes it easier for me to strike my line. This is a molded number 5 lens zipper, which means there's no right side or wrong side, which is kind of nice. We're going to take a 1/4 inch seam stick for canvas and upholstery, and we're going to put it right close to the raw edge of the flange on both sides. Now, don't order this double-sided tape from any other company, because you need to make sure it's an acrylic-based glue and not a rubber-based glue. A rubber-based glue will turn yellow and doesn't stick nearly as well. So we're going to go down the whole length that we need, and we're also going to put it on this side as well. All right, we've got it on here. Well, obviously we had to make 2 of these because you need 2 strips. That was long enough for this. So I'm going to peel off some of this transfer paper, and now that we have a line, this is our middle. I'm going to go a teeny bit over the edge of the fabric. Doesn't have to be much. And then we can just follow this on that line and baste it down, which makes it really easy for sewing. So just peel up the transfer paper as you go, baste it down, and we will baste a second one to this line with the teeth right there. So before we sew, I'm using some white vinyl. It's still the same brand, and you can see the knots on top. We do not want that. That'll cause a lot of puckering. I'm using a text 70 thread and a size number 16 needle. So this looks much better. There's no knot on top, and if you turn it over, you can just see the knot on the bottom side, which is perfect tensioning, because I'd rather have that knot on the bottom than I would on the top to prevent puckering. We're ready to sew. The left side of this presser foot is smaller than the right side, so I'm going to sew closer to the teeth like this and just use that as my guide. I'm not going to put a stop on the end right now. All we're doing is basically just sewing down the length, and I don't do any reversing because I have no idea where this is going to be cut. So this is a pretty easy job. I'm just getting set up, and this is all there is to it. We'll sew down both sides of the zipper, this one and then this one, and then we'll show you what's next. And I'm sewing at about a 6mm stitch length. Since it's all basted down, I don't have to do anything besides just guide it in. This is just a little tip. If you roll the fabric up in your lap, and if you put your finger over here to keep the fabric from wandering away from the teeth, this is how nice it works. It's really that easy. It just unfolds from your lap, and it sews beautifully.
In this chapter, we'll be sewing our loop fastener to the bottom plate.
So our hook is 3/4 of an inch from the edge, and I'm using the white scribe ball, and if you get the tip a little bit wet, it actually marks really well. It doesn't have to be marked exceptionally well. I just want a reference like this, but watch this. I use my tongue, and it marks pretty good on vinyl fabric. So we're going to put a line on this side and also this side 3/4 of an inch. I'm probably going to use a longer straight edge for this to make it go faster. This is our 2-inch loop fastener system, and you don't have to put this double-sided tape on, but I think it makes things easier because it stays in place. So we're just going to use the 1/4 inch right down the middle here and go down its length for what we need. We need 2 strips, obviously one for here and one for here. Just peel back the transfer paper, revealing the glue. This is going to go all the way to the end, sticking out just a little bit, and we'll stick it down right against our white line. This probably could have been easily done by eye, but hey, we want to be accurate. We're going to put it on this side and over here. So the loop is on, and I'm going to put a stitch very close to this edge. It doesn't really matter where, and also on this edge. One way I can do that is I can position this, and I can actually put the magnetic guide on like that. And again, no reversing is necessary because we're going to cut this short, and we're just going to sew down both those edges just like this.
Next up, we'll be adding a center line and matchup marks.
Our piece is 14 inches in height. We need to find the center, which would be 7. We need to strike a line all the way down this in the center, because after we turn it right side out, we need to sew these together. And this line will make it easier for us to sew this together when we have a line on the bottom or on the decorative fabric on the inside as well. So make sure you make a pretty heavy line here. I'm using the Scriball Black for this on the underside of this plate all the way down, right in the middle. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use our clear acrylic ruler. We're going to do match-up marks every 24 inches. Now they don't have to be 24 inches, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to make sure this is perpendicular to this edge, and these match-up marks are going to go straight across. So I'm marking the underside of our plate so that we can easily match up the decorative fabric and the center line when it comes time to do that. So every 24 inches for us, and we'll do this all the way down the run of this. Okay, now that we have those all the way down the length at every 24 inches, you can use the notcher here to create a notch like that, which works really well on both ends, or you can just cut a triangle with your scissors, but make sure you don't go into your seam allowance. So now we're going to cut open our zippers. I call this the dirty zipper approach because you don't have to do anything to the edges. So what you want to do is just, you can use a seam ripper or scissors. You just want to make sure that you don't damage your zipper and try to stay in the center of your seams. And that opens up and reveals our zipper. We're going to do that to this one and this one.
Coming up, we'll be measuring for and cutting our top plate.
Okay, I've removed the foam, both pieces, so that we can measure the decorative fabric. And we know that this seam is centered. So if I measure from the seam, and if I measure down to the edge, I get 10 inches. Now this seam is sewn without creating a fold, so it's basically just right on top of the plate. So as long as I measure from there, I know the exact size of the plate. It's probably a good idea to confirm it on this side as well. I didn't pull all the foam out of this side, but let's just confirm that it's 10 inches. And as you can see, it's just well, it is 10 inches if I put the tape on the right edge. So we're going to make this, we're going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance here and a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. We're going to go for the same feel of this so it can wrinkle nicely. We don't want to make it super tight for this. So I'm not going to reduce it to compress the foam. So we're going to make our plate 10.5 by 10.5. That's 21 inches. The Sailrite carries a lot of Outdura fabric, and this is what that is. It's 100% solution dyed acrylic fabric. It's great upholstery fabric that is for indoor and outdoor uses. This one definitely has a right side and a wrong side, and we want to try to keep the urethane within our cutting parameters because they put this on for a particular reason because of the fabric. Some of the Outdura fabrics don't have this. So we're going to flip the Outdura fabric over. This is an extremely UV resistant fabric, and it's stain and water resistant as well. So now we're working with the underside. So I'm using the white Scriball for this, and I want to stay within that urethane area. If you measure across, it's still 54 inches. So I'm just going to strike a line here because I know this will be perfectly straight all the way down. And we have to go further, obviously. And I think we have to go 10.5 to 10.5 is 21, isn't it? Yep. So 21 would be right there, and we will strike a line all the way down. We're going to make it the same size as our bottom plate, which I think was 143. Now you don't have to use a hot knife, but a hot knife will help prevent the edges from unraveling. And what we're using is the edge hot knife here, and I'm using the precision cutting foot and blade. This thing, it works awesome, and you don't have to have a cutting glass on the bottom. Notice it's not damaging the table at all. This only fits on the Sailrite Edge hot knives. Okay, we have the right side facing down, so this is the underside. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to strike a line in the middle. 21.5 makes it 10.5. And we're going to go all the way down with this line. This line is going to be used after we turn the cover right side out to sew down our bolster. So again, we're going to use that long straight edge to strike a line with the white Scriball.
Cutting the bottom and top plate to size is next.
So I've laid my bottom plate on top of the underside of our Outdura. This is the right side facing down. And it doesn't have to be exactly centered, but I just matched up the edge. And we want to take these match-up marks now and transfer them to the edge of our decorative fabric. So I'm just using the Scriball for that. And we want to do that at every single location, and I'll probably put a notch in it as well, just because it's easier to see a notch after we're done doing this. So make sure you do this down the entire length. Since we started with the match-up marks over here and they're every 24 inches, I'm going to put an X on this, meaning that this panel, or this end, gets matched up with this X. So we just obviously start matching up plates via this end. So I've got my old one. Remember, the one end is not square like it is over there on that end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on top of my bottom plate. My bottom plate is, the right side is facing down. And I want to make sure that it's on there nice and neat, because we know that we're okay here. We just need to make sure we have enough fabric, which I do. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this, making sure that the fabric doesn't move all the way to the end. And then I'm going to center that end, because that end is a little bit weird. I'm running into all kinds of stuff. So what I've done is I've laid my the old cushion on top of here, because this one is not square. The other end's completely square like it is here. But this is pretty easy to do. All I want to do is just basically copy this angle here. So I mark on the bottom side here, and then we'll just come up here. That one's pretty much square here. And that should give us enough. I know that I'm not adding 1/2 inch seam allowance, but that's okay. The foam's definitely going to find a home there. We're going to go all the way up here like that. So now we have that shape. So I'm going to cut this out right on that line that we made. Don't worry about cutting through your zipper. And then we're going to cut over here like that. My table is 72 inches long, so I'm going to put this end right up against the table. And then I'm going to come over here, and because I need to measure the length and cut it off, and mark it at 72 right there, so that I know that all I need to do is move this to the end of the table. 72 plus 72 right there. And then I'll put another mark here. Okay, this would be 144. We need 138.5, so that'd be 5.5 inches less than that. So this is going to be where I cut it. Now cut it, since this is square, I'm going to cut it perpendicular to one of these edges right across there. Don't worry about losing this match-up mark. I'm not adding any seam allowance for the length, because there's so much length that we're definitely going to be able to fit the foam in there. So that'll be where I cut. I'm also going to transfer my X over here since we're cutting this off. This is the inside surface of the Outdura. The outside surface is facing down. The 2 X's are here. We have to skip this match-up mark here and go to the next one here, because we obviously didn't need all this extra fabric, and I've laid this right in the center. So my match-up marks are lined up here, so that all I need to do is to strike a line, and then I'm going to cut this with the hot knife so that it's exactly the same size as this plate. I transferred my X to here, so I know these are the same ends, and now we have to go to the other end where there is shape, making sure your match-up marks are straight across from each other as you go. And this needs to be centered between that line here. So you may be tempted to follow this curve all the way to the edge here. And if you did that, your plate would be short by this many inches. What you need to do is come out to this corner right here on the bottom plate and be perpendicular to that, which is right about there. And then you need to place a mark there, okay? So don't go straight to there, that you'll be short. Now what you want to do is you want to follow the bottom plate, and you want to go from this straight edge here to that mark there, following that angle. So right like that. Okay, and then we come down here and we mark this perpendicular, which is right at the plate edge all the way down to here. So now this will actually, this plate will come up and it'll be perfect match to this, and then we have that shape that we need into this. So this is how we're going to cut this out with a hot knife.
In this chapter, we're going to be patterning and cutting the cushion ends.
So the bottom edge of my pattern material is straight, and I'm going to make sure it's up against the table as I place it on my foam, and I follow the contour of the foam to make this boxing end piece. Okay, so that's pretty good there. So now what I'm going to do is the 1/2 inch is right here. So I'm going to put a 1/2 inch mark there. And I'm going to do the 1/2 inch mark right here. Okay, and then I'm going to follow the contour, and you can tell where the seam laid on the foam. You can actually see it in the foam. So I'm just going to follow that, and we're going to come down. Now there's no foam here, but we have to come to here because we need the bottom edge to be the same length as the other one. So let's go down here. I'm going to go all the way down to here where the middle is, which is right there. You can see that line. Hopefully you can see that. And then we're going to come up here, and we're going to try to find out where the seam was laying here, which it looks like it was right here, because this foam is already a little bit compressed. If it were new, I'd just follow the edge of the foam. Now we can't just come down here. We have to go all the way to here. So what I'm going to do is just going to fair this up to that point. Okay, so now we can just add a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around, and we should be in good shape. We're going to leave this together so that these are actually a single piece. I am going to mark out on it. So now I'm just going to use scissors, and I'm going to cut it approximately a 1/2 inch bigger all around. At the bottom edge, we're just going to add a 1/2 inch since we don't have any fabric there to cut bigger. This is the outside surface. This is the wrong side of the decorative fabric. I'm going to lay it on top up here like that, and then we are going to add the 1/2 inch at the bottom, and I'll just do that with a straight line that I'll use with my clear acrylic ruler. And then we'll mark around the outside edges that we've already added the 1/2 inch to. So here's my line at the bottom, and make sure it's a 1/2 inch from there, and we'll just trace around this pattern. We're going to cut this out with a hot knife. Now we need to do the same thing to the other end, which is square. It doesn't have that angled edge. Okay, and then we'll show you what's next. So now what we need to do is we need to cut down at least a 1/2 inch, right like that, okay? And we'll do that to this one too. We didn't show this, it's done in the same process. This one is the one that doesn't have as much of a shape. So there we go.
Coming up, we'll be basting and sewing the ends to the top plate.
So I'm going to put double-sided tape on this because we're going to put on the ends now, and we want to walk it on so that we know that it's accurate. So just on the short end, this is the one that has the shape, the one that we patterned on video. And this is the right side of the fabric. This is the wrong side. So here is our center mark, and we really should transfer that to the front side, but let me take this off first. Okay, our center line is here. If you find out that your panel is not exactly on the center line, you can move it slightly because it really won't have any major outcomes. Then we're going to baste this on, and I'm going to pull a little bit on the fabric. And since we have so much shape here, I'm probably going to use a clip just to make sure it stays in position, because the fabric has to shrink around and be pulled. And we'll pull a little bit on this end boxing piece, and hopefully the ends will almost match up or be very, very close. Yes, they do. So that's actually perfect right there. So now we go over here. I'm going to put some more clips on this just to make sure it doesn't come unclipped. And then we go over this direction. Now again, there's a lot of shape here. So we're just matching up the edge, and I'll pull a little bit on this boxing end piece, or I can shrink it if I need to, but let's just see if this is going to work. I'm going to clip it so I don't lose all that work I just did, especially right here. Nice, look at that. Yeah, get a little dog ears. Dog ears are normal for shapes like this, and we're going to clip this to make sure it holds. I have the magnetic guide at a 1/2 inch, and we're sewing about a 4mm stitch length, and we want to sew right at this 1/2 inch, and I'm going to do some reversing here because we don't want this to come undone. I'm going to pull this clip, and we're just going to follow that edge because everything's basted. Should be nice and neat. Make sure there's no wrinkles in the part that you're sewing. They need to be outside of the seam allowance area. Pull the clips as you come up to them. There's a little bit of fabric coming up. I'm just going to baste it with my fingers here, like that. Okay, we're coming to the center area, and I need to make sure I push this fabric down so I don't get any wrinkles in where I'm supposed to sew. The wrinkles need to be outside the seam allowance area. So there's a lot of wrinkles here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth out those wrinkles like this, and we're going to sew to that V, right to there is that V, okay? And then I'm going to lift my foot and I'm going to distribute the wrinkles so they're outside of my seam allowance area, like that. So my foot is lifted. I'm going to pivot the fabric around and I'm going to lower my foot and I'm going to sew down this side now. So now we're doing the other half moon. I'm going nice and slow. Got a little bit of a bubble in there. I'm going to take these off and I'm going to smooth that out either by pressing it together or even just ripping it back up and rebasting it. Bury the needle as we do this so I don't lose my spot. Let's just sew up to that point. Got that wrinkle out of there. Bury the needle, baste the rest. And we're coming to the end, and I will do some reversing right here. Don't have much of a dog ear here, but that's fine. We'll still be able to use it pretty nicely like that. So now we have this on. We need to do the same thing to the opposite end.
Next up, we'll be installing our sliders and zipper reinforcements.
Now we need to put the sliders in before we go any further. So these are the sliders for the lens zip, and they just get put on like any normal slider would. Match up the ends and pull it in place. Sometimes you have to separate the teeth in front of it to get it to move. Let me just do that with my fingers here. And we're going to put it like right there, which is almost a foot from the end. We're going to do the same thing with this one. I'm using some of the basting tape on the back side of some scrap vinyl. Obviously it's the same vinyl that we're using. And then I'll fold this in half like this, and this creates a reinforcement for the fastener. Then I'm going to put double-sided tape here and break it off, and then we're going to put it on the underside of this with a fold going towards the teeth. So when we sew through that, it's just super strong. We're going to sew through this now just to make sure it stays in place, and we're also going to do it over here. And we're going to do it on the other end of the zipper on both sides. So we're sewing about 1/4 inch from the edge. This is just to hold it in place. We're going to be sewing through it again when we sew our plates together, but we've done it here, and then I'm going to move over here and do it to this one as well, and we'll do it to the other end in the same manner.
In this chapter, we'll be basting and sewing our panels together.
Okay, we're going to use 3/8 inch basting tape, and we're going to baste the plates together prior to sewing to make sure that everything's matching up, and we're going to use those match-up marks. So we're just going to go around the entire perimeter, staying close to the raw edge because we don't want to see this double-sided tape when we sew. Outside surfaces are facing each other. We're going to peel off the transfer paper, and this is the correct end. It is not the one with the shapely piece. And I'm going to peel it off to this point. And we're going to stick this on so that the corner is right there. And now we have these match-up marks. So if I come over here, you can see that what I need to do is I need to baste this without stretching, or if I need to, I can stretch or shrink. So I'm a teeny bit off. So what you can do is you can actually go like this, give it a little bit of a stretch. And as long as all your match-up marks are matching up, when you get to the end, it'll be perfect. So every 24 inches, I have another mark. Looks like this one's going to fall right where it needs to without stretching. So all we do with that is all the way down here. Now let's go to the end and complete that before I continue all the way to the other side. So when I get over here, I don't have match-up marks. I just need to pull my fabric over, match up this edge, and if it's the same length, it was cut to the same length, it should fall right on that corner, and it does a little bit. It looks like I need to stretch just a teeny bit, so I'm going to pull slightly, and look at that. This fabric should land right on that edge, and then we can baste down this side following the same procedure. And this one was a little bit short, but don't worry about that. You can always kind of cut in a notch here, which might not be a bad idea. Right here, we're going to cut straight in right beside that stitch, going no deeper than a 1/2 inch. And then we can pull this over, match it up, and make sure that our match-up marks come out perfect. So we're coming to this end, and to allow this to take a turn, actually I have a dog ear here. It's probably going to take a turn pretty nicely. So let's see. Sometimes you'll have bigger dog ears and smaller dog ears. Yeah, so she comes up to that corner there. Will this baste without, yeah, I gotta cut a slit. Sometimes you just have to figure out what you have to do. What I think I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go like this because there's a lot of extra fabric. Yeah, that'll work, like just like that. Baste into here, and there's our middle line, so we're right about perfect with that. Good. Ugh. Fingers are sticking. Baste in that. We're going to need a clip there, but I will get one. Let's clip it, because otherwise this thing is going to come apart because it's so long. Put a few clips here. Okay, now are we going to have the right amount of fabric here? So we have match-up marks are matched up, and look at that. This is coming right to that corner exactly how we designed it. Just do that, and then we match this up, and wow, that is nice. So we are all basted together and ready for sewing. We're going to take the machine and sew a 1/2 inch around this perimeter. We're just going to start anywhere here, and we're a 1/2 inch from the edge, and make sure you don't sew the excess fabric in. That's the only thing that could screw up this whole process. I'll do a little bit of reversing at the beginning here, and we'll just take the clips off as we go. We want to make sure that it stays basted together, so check every once in a while, because the glue doesn't stick exceptionally well to acrylics. That's why it's stain and water resistant. So all we need to do is just sew around the entire perimeter, making sure that everything is exactly how we have it. I'll show you what we do when we get to one of these corners here, which we're coming up to. Move that clip. So what I'm going to do is just fold this over, and we'll sew, because our seam allowance is a 1/2 inch, but there's our stitch. So, and my stitch should be about a 1/2 inch. So I'm right on my stitch now, and my needle's coming up slightly because I'm going to roll the balance wheel over. Then I'm going to lift my foot, and I'm going to pivot on that, and then I'm going to sew down this side at a 1/2 inch. Okay, now that's not a full 90-degree turn, but we're coming up to one that is. This is that shapely end. And we do have a big patch right under there for our reinforcement of the zipper, so that may be a little bit of a bump that we have to work through. Let's see if we do. No, it's going to sew right over that easily. If you have a machine that's not as tough as this, you may want to just do one layer of a zipper stop instead of folding it like we did. Now here at the junction, I'm going to, since the fabric is a little bit from the edge, which I expected, I'm going to do a little bit of reversing here just to reinforce that area. Okay, and now we're coming up to this 90-degree, sewing over another zipper stop, and I get to this corner, there's my stitch, which is right about there. I'm going to bury my needle. I'm a 1/2 inch from the edge. I'm a little bit off the stitch, but that's not going to make any difference here. I'm going to pivot on this. I'm going to push this in. I'm going to just sew this with this down. It could be folded the other way. I'm just going to sew it down. And then I'm going to move this over. And don't worry about that. That's not going to be a big deal. And we're going to sew down this side. So that's all there is to this. Just again, make sure that everything is basted exactly how you have it before. The basting means that you don't have to match anything up, and the clips help hold it in place. Here we are coming to where we began sewing, and we just want to go right over those stitches and do a little bit of reversing. I'm going to sew over them by about 1 inch or so, and then just do 1 or 2 stitches in reverse. Okay, we're ready to take it to the table. Now we have to put the seam in the center next.
Sewing our bolster stitch is next.
To turn it right side out, I'm just going to open up one zipper all the way to the end. The other one we'll just leave where it's at. So there, and then just keep ripping this up. It's so long. Okay, now just turn it right side out and push the corners out. Okay, so these are our match-up marks, and I probably should have put them onto this so that I know the bullseye to hit for the middle line. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up like this. It's already sewn together, and I'm going to put this on and put a little cross there at each one of these match-up marks. So spread it flat. Make sure that the fabric's going straight across. You can just use one side, don't worry about the other. And transfer your match-up marks to the middle of this line. That'll help you a lot when you're doing this stitch. I'm going to put the 1/4 inch basting tape right on top of our line, and this will just help us to hold it in position as we sew this top stitch. So now it's really important to, because it doesn't stick exceptionally well to this, to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler or something heavy to secure the basting tape down well so it sticks a little bit better. All the way down. Peel off the transfer paper. I'm just going to go to here so far, and then I'm going to fold this back, and your job is to basically just match this line up and the match-up marks. And if the match-up marks are a teeny bit off, it's not going to matter much. Right there. We'll hold it down. And then we just want to do this all the way down. I probably should turn this around so I can see it. I'll go to this side of the table. Now, one of the things that we realized is that we need to have a line on top of this, which is basically in the center of this. After we get it basted in place, we're going to go ahead and strike a line on, and that way we have a reference to where to sew. So the line is at 3 inches, which is the middle of this, and I verified it by looking at the line on this side as well. This actually goes down pretty nicely if you keep it zipped together like this on one side, and then I'm going to strike a light line all the way down this length so I can use this to follow it for my sewing. Okay, so we have a line all the way down. It's nice and flat. We verified that we're in the center. We're ready for sewing. Now, because this is so long, I'm going to start there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully fold this so that it doesn't come apart. So I'm going to do this, and that way we don't have things that are being twisted and turned. And as we sew to them, we'll unfold it. Okay, so I've got this flat. It looks pretty good on the top, on the outside decorative fabric. I'm going to start about a 1/2 inch from the edge here, and I'm going to do some reversing right here. And my foot's a little bit on that bump, so I'm going to raise it up and kind of push the fabric through. Definitely want to do some reversing because this is going to come under some stress. If you don't do enough reversing, then your stitch is going to pull out. I'll probably even reverse over here. There we go. That should be plenty. Now your job is to just simply sew on top of that line, making sure that nothing moves, okay? And I'm going to unfold this as I go. And we'll sew all the way to the other end and do some reversing there as well.
In this chapter, we'll be inserting our foam into our finished bolstered backrest cushion.
So now we need to open up the other zipper. Once that's done, all the way to the end, and we need to insert our foam. This is my angled side here. We'll cut those trailers here in a little bit. So I'm just going to insert it in here, push it into the corner as best as possible, and we'll start feeding it in. My zipper's all the way on the other end, unfortunately, which I probably should have started where my slider is. So I'm going to go to the other end because that's what end we should start with, because I can't close it like that. Okay, before we zip it shut, we need to make sure that the foam is pushed into the corners, because we aren't going to want to unzip this, I mean, unless we have to, and redo it again. So that looks pretty good. I think I can start zipping. And we're going to do this to both sides in the same manner, and we'll show you what it looks like. As you're zipping, you need this to almost be flat, so sometimes you have to roll the foam around like this to get this up on that edge, like that, and then you can zip it shut. Because if you just zip it down without doing your adjustments, you're going to find that you're going to have to unzip it and redo it. So make sure this is up, kind of up on top of this bottom foam as you zip.
In this final chapter, we'll be installing our backrest on the boat.
Our bolster backrest is now ready to be installed, and they did have some snaps here, which we didn't install because we believe the hook's going to hold it. But if it doesn't, then we'll obviously just put snaps in the back side. So it's going to attach to the hook and loop starting here. We'll get it nice and snug up there. That looks good. Push it into the corners, and we want this wrinkled look. That's what we were trying to achieve, and it definitely looks like it's going to do that. It's looking really good. There's a bulge here, but that's because of the boat, I believe. Yeah, oh yeah, because of this thing. So it bulges out a little bit here. Trying to keep it down against the seats as I attach it. And you notice that the hook and loop, the hook back here, is actually screwed in spots because it's come loose in some areas where the adhesive didn't hold, which is not a bad idea to use screws like that. Wow, it's a gorgeous fit. Nice.
Check out the description below for a full list of the tools and materials we used in this project. If you want to see more DIY projects like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel. From all of us here at Sailrite, I'm Seth Grant. Thanks for watching.